What is up, everybody? This is the Off the Ball Network college football playoff reaction show, overreaction show, if you will. Week 3 of the playoff rankings are out. I'm here. I'm Jeff from Jeff Needs Sports. I got Mo Murphy with me from Up in Flames, and I got Stuart with Morning Brew. We're gonna talk about the most recent rankings. We're gonna talk about what went wrong, what went right, surprises, the paths. The most thing we're gonna try to dig a little bit into the paths of these teams to get into the playoffs tonight. And then we're going to talk about Stewart's rankings that came out earlier this week, how they differ, why they differ, what's wrong, what's right. And then we'll probably spend 10 minutes watching Mo and Stu fist fight. It's gonna be a good show. Happy to be here. Again, thanks for watching Off the Ball Network. Click, like, share, review. You guys know the deal. It means a ton to us, and we really appreciate it. So first of all, Mo from Up in Flames, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm good. I mean, to be able to still be able.
Are you okay to be this close to Stu? Is everything all right?
Stu, listen, and I wanted to say this before. I love Stu.
We all love Stu.
Like, I think me and Stu have this, like, we really love each other, but when we go at it, we just go at it, and it's like enjoyable. I don't take it personal. I don't think he takes it personal, or else I don't think neither one of us would be on this show tonight. So therefore, it's just all fun and games.
That's fair. Stuart, how are you doing tonight? Are you ready for this? I think you're prepared for what's coming, but I appreciate you being on. You haven't been on my show in quite a while. You've had me on yours to do a lot. The quarterback rankings over the summer. Everybody go back to Stu's show and listen to those. But thanks for coming on tonight.
Like, that was great, by the way. Like,
yeah. Quarterback rankings.
Got to throw that out there.
They're great.
I put a lot of work into that. You know, after the Mo knows, I put a lot of work into the draft. So pretty much from now until April, it's all draft stuff for me. But after that, it's, I dive into going back into the quarterbacks and rewatching the film. But, I'm confident in my rankings, just like I am in the quarterback rankings. I feel like I put in the work. And so even though people disagree, and that's okay, like, what's the point of having rankings if we all agree, right? But, I think the fun part is you do get to debate, you do get to talk about where you're at. And I think the fun part for me is I can sit here and say now I think college football probably started the college football playoff expansion a year too late. You talk about a year where it could have popped off. It could have been this year, but they're starting it a year too late, in my opinion.
All right. Well, you know what? That's a great way to segue. Let's dig into that a little bit. We're going to talk about who's still alive. So for anybody who hasn't, like, if you're out there and you don't quite know the rankings, I'll go through them real quick. This show is mainly about the teams that are alive for the playoffs. I won't lie. So, 25 through basically, I think we decided like 10. You're kind of on your own out there. Plenty of shows to listen to, or get at us on Twitter and we'll talk about it. 1, Georgia. That's the only difference from the last couple of weeks. Ohio State. 2, Ohio State. 3, Michigan. 4, Florida State. We got 5 is Washington. We got 6 is Oregon. 7's Texas. 8, Alabama. 9, Missouri. 10, Louisville. And I got to be honest, before the show, this is kind of where we discussed. I'll start with Stu. What's your cutoff? What's your cutoff this week on who's realistically can still get into the college football playoffs?
I think it's 8 for me. I have Texas at 8. Mine, I have Bama at 7. I think the cutoff is 8. I think there's a shot where there's a chance, I think, where Bama gets there. I really do. But the problem I have with this is, there is the head-to-head thing with Texas. The only reason they're 8 for me is right now they're not the best team without Quinn Ewers, I don't think. I mean, they've shown ways they can win without Quinn, but when Quinn's there, I think they're better than Alabama. But I think everything's setting up. I think the committee's setting it up. And you heard the propaganda on the ESPN show where they're like, hey, Bama looks better than they did 6 weeks ago when they played Texas. Hey, Bama's looking like a much improved team. That one game at the end of the year could be the difference between them getting in and not getting in. And it's like, if you put them in my opinion, you got to put Texas in because Texas beat them head to head. And you can't tell me that doesn't matter because it does
clearly
matter.
beat them. Clearly beat them.
Yeah, beat them by like double digits. So
on the road.
Yep. In Tuscaloosa, 10-point victory.
There
was no
going to win the game.
So for me, for the committee, and I don't always agree with the committee, but I think if you say where's the cutoff for the people whose rankings actually matter, it's the committee's rankings. I think the cutoff for them is Alabama, but the question becomes at what point, how big of a jump does Bama make? I guess we'll find out at the end of the year.
Mo, how do you feel about the cutoff right now?
Mine's Louisville, and I'm skipping.
Okay.
I'll say 9 teams because Missouri's ahead of Louisville. But Missouri can't play in the conference championship. So, like,
Yeah,
even
Missouri's done.
putting Missouri there, I think you could flip Louisville to 9 and Missouri to 10. And because of what the future looks like for both teams, I think it's justifiable. I don't really care who you think wins on a neutral field right now in that instance because Missouri's not going to play on a neutral field in a college football playoff. So I think Louisville, for the simple fact, over the next 2 weeks, a lot can happen. There's a lot of things that might happen that if Louisville wins out and it is a one-loss ACC, I think they have the worst argument of one-loss conference champs to get in. So maybe but things could shake out for them to where they have an opportunity. So, I mean,
let's work through this real quick.
I think the committee putting them at 10 tells you that they think there's no shot they make.
They're already writing them off losing to Florida State, though. Like,
I think
these rankings are writing off teams already, though.
Like, I think if they win, even if they beat Florida State, I think by the committee strictly having them where they have them, they're saying there's no shot they're going to make it, even if they beat Florida State, which is not fair to Louisville and Mo's point, because I do think maybe, they have a shot, but I think the committee putting them at 10 is telling you, even if they beat Florida State in the ACC championship, which I think is possible because I'm not a believer in Florida State. You look at it and, if they beat Florida State in the ACC championship, I think the committee's still telling you there's no way they're getting there.
So here's I love doing this. One of my favorite things I ever do is the chaos theory. So here's just saying out loud what it looks like Louisville would need. Louisville obviously has to win out. That takes care of Florida State. So there's a spot. We already talked about Missouri. Missouri just really are in a position that they just can't get in. They just really don't have a path to get in because of Alabama and Georgia going to the SEC championship game. So we're going to assume that Texas loses the rematch to Oklahoma, the Big 12 championship game. That's going to eliminate Texas. So now they've jumped Texas. So now we've got them up to 7. Oregon or Washington are going to lose that game. Now we've got them up to 6. So now what we're really saying Louisville has to do their best shot, because we know either Georgia or Alabama's in. So there's a spot. We know either High State or Michigan's in, outside of something crazy going on, this weekend, which nobody perceives. So now the argument for Louisville to even have a shot, so that means Pac-12's in, SEC's in, Big Ten's in. There's one spot left for Louisville to have the argument. They have to have the argument over Ohio State or Michigan with one loss. So they've got to be able to jump them. But if they get, they get to play that extra, ACC championship game is what we're planning on. There's the path for Louisville to get in. It's a lot. I don't think it's going to happen, but I do think it's worth noting that there is, again, Mo brought it up before the show. Like, the committee writes off a lot of these games.
Yeah.
But in Louisville, we're writing off because terrible loss to Pitt, one of the worst losses of the teams that we're saying are still eligible. But then if I'm Oregon State, I'm like, whoa, over here, guys. Like, we're better than Louisville, and we still have a chance to beat Washington. You know what I mean? So if we're going to say Louisville, then Oregon State's not dead.
Well, I think
I have them at 10 in mind, but go ahead, Mo.
Okay, so I'm gonna paint a clear picture of where you went, Jeff. But I think with Oregon State is a simple fact: we haven't seen a 2-loss team make the playoffs, and I just don't see it being a Pac-12.
No chance.
Here's what Louisville needs. First off, they need Oregon State to win this weekend. And I know that sounds crazy because Oregon State is behind them.
About Washington losing.
If Oregon State beats Washington,
it's not crazy. Oregon State's favored in that game. So a lot of people think Oregon State's going to win that.
Corvallis is a hard place to play.
Corvallis is a hard place to play. Ask any of the good teams in the Pac-12 when they're good and look like they could go to the playoffs, how much they struggle. So if they beat Washington.
Good defense, good quarterback. Thanks to the transfer portal for getting Uiagalelei out of whatever Clemson's got going on right now and giving him a chance to thrive.
Realistically, if I'm Louisville, I want Oregon State to win the Pac-12. So if they beat Washington this week, they beat Oregon next week. Oregon State will therefore turn around and play Washington again in the Pac-12. Now, if Oregon State, they can't get in. Oregon,
I like it, but just think what you just said is Oregon State's going to have one of the best resumes in college football in 2 weeks.
But they got 2 losses, and so therefore, agreed. I think that paints the picture. Now, the thing about it is where you're arguing with Louisville is the thing me and Walker talk about on Phil Stormers all the time. It's not fair, but hey, it sucks to suck. It sucks to be sporadic. It sucks to
the
not.
ACC's bad. And you got beat by Pitt.
Bad, and you're Louisville. And when you're sitting here talking about a 12-1 ACC champ Louisville or a 11-1 Ohio State who we've seen have gotten the benefit of the doubt on multiple occasions in the college football playoffs, or 11-1 Michigan, like who would you rather see? Who do you
Louisville
think more competitive?
Okay, so let's
I
do
think,
a couple
but I
more.
think the committee's telling you just by how much they value Ohio State, having them, in the
Agreed.
previous rankings, the number 1 team in the country, number 2 now. I think even if, let's say, they lose next week to Michigan, I still think they're the 4th team in the country when the next rankings come out. Like,
If they fall the way they need to fall.
Well, let's put it.
I mean,
So
I
here's
think it's Georgia. I think Georgia, Michigan, whoever, insert whoever you want at 3. Maybe it is Ohio State, and then it's Ohio State. The committee has shown you and told you they love Ohio State. Ohio State
they love Oregon too.
They would have to get beat by 30, I think, by Michigan for the committee to be like, in order to keep them out. Because I just think if it's a close one, if they go down to Ann Arbor and it's a close one, I don't think there's any shot that Ohio State's out of the college.
Yeah, I don't think Louisville at the end of the year in the scenarios we're talking about, they definitely cannot jump Michigan. Louisville cannot jump a 1-loss Michigan regardless of what it happens. I don't think they can jump a 1-loss Ohio State. So what we're saying here is Louisville, we actually don't give Louisville a chance. One of those teams would have to get upset this weekend.
I agree, Mo. I don't think it's fair.
Would be fair that Louisville, and I understand. Trust me.
Well, that's why we're going to 12 teams next year.
Being college football playoff, like being college football, loving the playoffs, wanting the 4 best teams, no matter how we end up with a blowout. Most of the time, some team last year was the best college football playoff ever in semifinal, and then you get to the national championship, and you're like, Jesus Christ, Michigan! If you could have just held on, I'm sure you could have been more competitive than 63-7 in the national championship. But last year, the semifinal, that was the most accurate you could have gotten as far as the 4. I don't know if they're necessarily 4 best teams, but the 2 best matchups that created the best games.
Ohio State and Georgia should have been the national championship last.
Should have been, but it was 42-41 in that game.
Well,
it was
but Ohio State couldn't beat Michigan. That's why that happened.
Yeah, and it was 55-49 in the TCU Michigan game. Like those were the 2 closest games down to the wire that you could ask for back-to-back on the New Year's Eve.
Okay, so let's ask this. Let's work the other way. I think we all think Georgia's in. Let's talk about Georgia. Is there any way that you guys, we'll just move through this quick. If you say no, we'll just move on. Can Georgia not get in?
Yeah,
outside of a miracle this weekend.
I don't think there's a possibility. I mean, the only person they would lose to would be Alabama from here on out.
Doesn't matter.
And I don't think they can drop out because of losing Alabama.
Yes.
And here's what I'll say.
Who would replace them then, Mo?
If Alabama wins, they're in. 12-1 SEC champ.
I believe that.
We all argue that. If Washington remains undefeated, they're in.
Right.
Florida State remains undefeated, they're in. Michigan or Ohio State remain undefeated, they are in. You will have 3 undefeated conference champs, and you will have the 1-loss team. And the 1-loss team is the one team that deserves to get in because they won the SEC championship, and that would be Bama. And I think under that circumstance, Georgia's out of the argument. If Texas is 12-1 and wins the Big 12, and Alabama finishes 12-1 and wins the SEC, the only argument you're having is who deserves to get in over Texas.
Okay, so let's do this.
Florida State are in.
And I'm only speeding up because this is interesting. We got a lot. So let's admit, let's work through it this way. Let's admit winner of the SEC's in, regardless of which team wins.
Yes,
they're in. Winner of that Big Ten. We're assuming. Here's what I'll say. I will say this about the Big Ten, and we'll talk more about it maybe next week, or we'll talk about it the week after. I'm not sure that Iowa couldn't upset somebody in the Big Ten championship game. It is not a foregone conclusion that defense couldn't come up with a miracle.
I'm be honest
in that game. So let's admit, winner of the Big Ten. Let's say the winner of the SEC's in, winner of the Big Ten's in.
Mm-hmm.
We assume Florida State's going to go undefeated. If they lose, they're not in. But we'll say
they go undefeated.
So now here's who we're going to be arguing about. The loser of the SEC championship game. We're assuming we're going to be deciding whoever wins that Oregon-Washington rematch. And then if Texas wins out, we're going to have 3 teams for one spot. 3 really, really, really good teams for one spot. How do you, and again, I think now that we've talked about this, Louisville's out. Like, I don't see any way Louisville jumps all these teams.
Yeah, I get it.
Everybody wants to put Oregon in. Everybody feels this is like one of those years. Everybody feels like it was just like last year with Alabama. Like Alabama got credit for those losses, and they should have. They lost 2 games. They never trailed in either one of those games, and they lost 2 games last year, got left out of the playoffs. As to where, like, I think everybody feels that Oregon's better than Washington. That seems like a consensus, like across the country.
But Washington has the head-to-head.
Right. So what I'm saying though is they really want to put Oregon in. Like you can tell. Oregon wins out. So that means they beat Washington. They take care of business. Now we've got this one-loss Oregon team. Let's say they keep looking good. We think they will. Now we got this Oregon team, the Texas team that beat Alabama, and then we've got the loser of the SEC championship game. How are they possibly going to decide? How can they put Alabama in above Texas? And then if it's Texas, Oregon, you put Oregon in. So are Alabama and Texas possibly?
I think you have to put the conference champion in at that point, which means
so Alabama have to go would be in.
Well, what
so
you're saying is you have the SEC champion, you'd have the Big Ten champ, you'd have in this case you'd have Florida State, the ACC champ. So you'd have to put in my opinion, the Pac-12 champ.
So now we're going to be arguing
in your scenario. Or you're arguing Texas because under this scenario, we're assuming Texas wins out and wins the Big 12. You're going to get a conference champ that gets out. That there's highly possibility because this scenario.
And if Washington wins out, they're in. I'm getting. I'll say that.
But this is the most simple scenario.
And that would eliminate Oregon also. So that takes care of that. Right. Even
so
still,
the most simple scenario though. And I think here's my thing: if Oregon wins, how you leave out the Heisman winner?
In my scenario, though, Alabama has won. I'm saying if Alabama wins the SEC championship, if Georgia wins, that takes care of a lot of this because you've eliminated Alabama.
I don't see a world because they showed you. I don't see a world. I know what Mo's saying, and I understand it, but I think, and I agree with Mo. So like we're in the same page, but I think the way the committee's thinking, I'm trying to put myself in the committee's shoes. The way the committee is thinking and what they've shown you is they highly, highly, highly value Georgia. Like Georgia would almost have to just blow up the entire team for there to be something wrong. I don't see a world in the committee's eyes. Now our eyes is different, but in the committee's eyes, I don't see a world where even if they lose to Alabama, they're out.
But then what do we do? So now, but here's what the committee said, and I agree with you, Stu. This is what
they haven't been put in that. They haven't been put in that position.
Now we have Alabama, Georgia, Big Ten winner, and Florida State. Now you're going to have Pac-12 winner, who we said all year had to get in, unless Oregon State messes this up, and then Texas, who is going to be like we lost a game, we beat Bama, Georgia couldn't beat Bama, we won our conference. Like it's a mess. Like, but then I don't see a world where you're like, oh, if you don't do that, then Georgia's going to wind up being like 7. You're going to drop them from 1 to 7.
You drop them
just so
5.
you can.
They go to 5,
I guess. But 1 to 5, they haven't done that with anybody.
But the thing is, what we know what the committee's telling us, but they have not been in this scenario where at the end of the season they're facing 3 one-loss teams. 2 of them have a conference championship, and the third one they think is better than the other 2. They haven't been put in this scenario in the playoffs, period. Like they have not had to sit here and argue 3 teams for 1 spot, and 2 of them are conference champs, and one's just the team that we feel like is better than everybody. It gave it to Ohio State both times.
See if you guys agree, but here's a huge difference in this year. I'll just say it out loud real quick. These are the teams that we're talking about fighting for the playoffs. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Oregon, Texas, and Alabama. We are talking about 8 of the biggest brands in college football. We're not talking about Cincinnati. We're not talking about TCU. We're not talking about leaving Louisville out.
We're talking about everything you want to see. We're talking about
we are talking about whoever you leave out, that person, somebody's going to make a phone call to somebody and be like, are you serious? Like that's just the truth of it. Like it is a business. It is a TV show. We are going to have at least 3 giant brands left out of this that are going to be really upset at the end of the year. I think it's kind of fascinating. Stu mentioned earlier, we're a year late for the 12-team playoff.
You know what makes it worse?
We're going to talk about 12. I'm going to save it for a few minutes. I'm just giving this to the audience. We're going to talk about this 12-team playoff scenario here in a few minutes because I think it's kind of fascinating, but we're going to stick with what we're talking about. So Mo, what do you want to discuss here?
Well, I just wanted to so here's where Stu is 100% correct on why they're a year too late. Because if you look at it, some of these teams literally lose. That would be like, hey, this is why we need to have a 12-team playoff. Lose everything they have of being relevant. Oregon loses almost every playmaker that matters on their team that makes them this good. Washington losing everybody to the NFL next year. Michigan losing everybody to the NFL next year. Once again, Georgia, but they've shown they can reload, so it's a little.
I think Georgia's fine.
Georgia's fine, but three of the teams that we would say should be competitive, that we would make an argument, they're literally losing everything. Like Washington's not going to be this good next year. I don't know if Oregon's going to be this good next year. Shoot, they might not even have their head coach next year. And Michigan, as good as Michigan's been, I'm just saying they're losing a lot next year as far as what's important for their pass.
So's Ohio State, by the way. So's Ohio State, by the way.
But you've seen the flashes of what Ohio State.
We've seen Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama been able to recoup. There's let's talk real quick because I really want to talk about like the scenarios of the 12-team playoff because I think that's an interesting conversation that I haven't quite heard this week. So let's talk about the only thing that changed this week, really. And again, I just want to put it out there. The committee took the easy way out as usual. They've got Michigan, Ohio State 2 and 3. Well, that's stupid. They play each other. They got Washington, Oregon 5 and 6. That's stupid. They play each other. But that's what this committee does. They always let it play itself out, which I think is a chicken shit way to go about it. But real quick, let's talk about the only move really to talk about. Georgia finally jumped Ohio State. Everybody in the country kind of agreed that they think Georgia's a better team than Ohio State. Everybody agreed that Ohio State had maybe the best resume in college football 2 weeks ago. And then now Georgia's played two, top 10 teams top 15, teams when they played them, walk through them, look like the better team. The quarterback's coming around. But so the only move, we'll just talk for a second, like Georgia jumping Ohio State. I don't know. I guess, Stu, just how much do you care about that, or what's your feeling on it?
We'll talk more about it later when we get to my rankings.
And there's not much to it. I just given you that was the only change to really talk about.
I think for the first, I'm not sure what went into them having Ohio State number one. I said from the
they
jump,
love Notre Dame is the only thing I can.
I've been on this from the jump that I didn't think they were the number one team in the country. I don't think they're a top 3 team in the country, but we'll talk about that later on in the show. But my point remains that
later on, Mo. Later on,
I think Georgia is what I meant to say. I combined Georgia and Mo's name together and came up with Joe.
But I like that. Georgia. I like it.
I think with Georgia, the thing is, like, I think the committee was looking for a reason for whatever to just be like, they're not as good as we think they are. Like, oh, it's Brock Bowers. Like, Brock Bowers is carrying that team. Then Brock gets hurt, and they're like, actually, guys, like, Carson Beck's playing pretty well. This defense playing pretty well. They're still blowing teams out. There's not really much we can say about why insert whatever team here is better than Georgia when they won the national championship last year, and they've not given you any reason otherwise to show.
Matter. That is not supposed to matter.
It's not supposed to, but I mean,
matter.
I mean,
here's what I'll say about Georgia. Like, just me personally, they are the best team that I watch on tape all year. Their offense is the most well structured. Like, it's not even that their players are better or whatever. They just they're the most unpredictable offense for an offense. I don't care if they come out in 3 tight ends, you don't know what they're going to run. Like, Georgia's done a really good job on offense. Defense, they still tackle very well. They also, just like Michigan, this is a real thing, had the benefit of not getting beat up for 8 weeks before they started playing tough games. That is a huge benefit. If you look at, like, we'll say Ohio State, Florida State opening, or not opening, but playing LSU right away, you get dinged up. You have guys on the sideline. You have this guy not playing. Ohio State, goes to Notre Dame and then has to play Penn State after Notre Dame. The one thing that college football proved this year, it was a huge advantage to not play anybody early in your schedule because, like, everybody discounts that now. Now that Georgia's played 2 really good teams in a row and walked through them, I gave them credit for that. What they also did was they kind of did it pretty healthy. And I know you can point to one guy like Bowers was dinged up or whatever. They're way, way more healthy than these teams that have been battling all year. You know what I mean? Washington, Oregon played weeks ago. Ohio State, Notre Dame played, 2 months ago. Like, that's a real thing. So Georgia and Michigan are both. Michigan is literally the healthiest team in college football, which because they haven't played anybody. And by the time they played Penn State had to play Ohio State. Like, these are just real things I'm saying. I know everybody sees Ohio State in the background. I'm just telling real. You guys can argue me. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong or right. But it's a huge benefit. The softer your schedule is earlier in the season, take advantage of the healthier team late. And I think Georgia's taking advantage of that now. Like, they look so much healthier as to where Missouri, Missouri is a really, really good football team, but they've had a little more work to do. So by the time Georgia gets them, they're not on the same plane of health wise. It's just a real thing. And from what I see from Georgia, they're just a faster, stronger. They got more of their players on the field, and I can see why the committee put them up there. I also agree with Mo. It shouldn't have anything to do with what happened last year. It shouldn't have anything to do with predictions, which this committee seems full of predictions. So Georgia, jumping your beloved Buckeyes.
I'm not mad. I mean, here's my thing. Up to the point Ohio State was number one, I never felt like they were the best team in the country. First off,
right.
I love the fact that everybody else hated that we were voted the best team in the country.
Yes, it didn't bother me at all. And here's the thing. I want to clear something up before Mo has to say. Ohio State's number one a lot, just in case anybody doesn't know. We've been number one so much, like we don't really care that much about it. We're always we were the first number one in the BCS. We were one of the, like, it's not that big of a deal to be ranked number one in Ohio State.
But it is in a sense because it is on my sense where, like, you guys are fans, you guys are kind of pulling from the heartstrings from a guy who doesn't really, who watches from the inside out. And you tell me, and you guys consistently tell me, especially you big time college football guys consistently tell me, and Mo said it 8 times in the show already, the 4 best teams. If you tell me it's the 4 best teams, then you need to rank them from the first best to the 4th best. And having Ohio State number 1 overall, you're telling me they were the best team in the country when the eye test told you otherwise.
That's what we're saying. We're saying that.
At this point, though, they proved they had and I say this, they didn't prove that they're the best team in the country.
What they should have been number 1.
Well, but what they did prove is that whoever you thought was the best team in the country played nobody. At the end, they got rewarded for not waiting until the end of the season to play who you need to play to get into the playoffs. They got rewarded for playing Notre Dame while Georgia was playing East Atlanta and Michigan was playing Bowling Green. You get rewarded for in week 3 or week 4 when you're matching up against a non-conference opponent that's ranked in Notre Dame. And all I'm going to say about Notre Dame is going into that game, Notre Dame had put on 3 performances. They had one of the top offenses in the country. Numbers wise, everybody was Sam Hartman, the offense, they finally got a quarterback. Look what Notre Dame's going to be able to do. The minute Ohio State beat them, all that got discredited.
That is fair.
No, now Notre Dame's not as good as we thought. Of course, this is what they do. Even though everybody was picking Notre Dame because of how potent that offense looked the first 3 weeks. All I'm saying is Ohio State, it wasn't about being the best team in the country as opposed to we're going to reward you for not ducking playing Bowling Green in week 4 when you played Notre Dame.
Then don't tell me it's about the 4 best teams in the country. Then tell me
we can all agree with that.
Tell me it's about resume. It's about who you've played, all that kind of stuff.
They've told you that though. They've said
but they also turn around and say we feel like every time at the end of the year when we come to when the commissioner comes on or the head of the committee comes on at the end of the season, at the end of the rankings, every year he says, well, we feel like these are the 4 best teams in the country.
Which is ridiculous because
if that's how you feel, then don't
TCU
tell me it's about who you've played. Because that's not necessarily true. Because the eye test is part of that. And right now the eye test tells you Georgia's the best team in the country, and they have been all year. I don't care if you played Northwest Mountain State of Missouri or if you played Penn State. The point is Georgia is the best team in the country. They have been since the beginning of the year.
With that. But what I'm saying, I won't disagree with that. Georgia, I said if Georgia beat Ole Miss, like when they beat Missouri, I was like, if they beat Ole Miss in the same week that Ohio State is playing Michigan State, they're going to go to number 1. You beat the number. Not only did they beat Ole Miss had that 9 next to their name. They made them look like an unranked team.
Here's the problem with this. Here's the problem with this. That is correct, but it's still divided up by loss columns, and that's where the breakdown is. Because if Georgia had 1 loss and beat Ole Miss like that, they would still have to be behind, I don't know, Texas or whatever. Which that's where the breakdown is, because the committee, they still divide this up. You got all the undefeated teams up top, and then you start with the 1-loss teams, and then you start with the 2-loss teams. College football is still about the loss column. You still get credit for 0 in the loss column more than you do for who you played. It is a mistake. All they've said is like Michigan did the right thing. Georgia had the right schedule. Like that's how you want to play college football. There is no reason to get tested early in the season. Florida State would be – here's where Florida State didn't play LSU. They'd be at 5 and Washington would be at 4. That's the only difference that would be in this. But yet Florida State would had to play LSU. So, like, that's where you guys, we're all saying the same thing here is like this committee decides who's the best amongst loss columns because that's just the truth of it.
But
like,
that matters.
I think what's that?
That matters. Like in college football, one loss.
No, that's fine. But what I'm saying, if that matters, then just say it. Like come out at the beginning of the season and say, we're not ranking so-and-so over so-and-so because they have a loss no matter when it happens in the season. But they don't say that. Like Stu said, they come out and say, oh, it's 4 best teams. They also, you know what they also said the first week? Every week we start from fresh, even though there's been the only change has been Georgia jumping Ohio State. Most predictable.
This has been my problem with the years past too, is they say it's the 4 best team. You get a team like Cincinnati in there.
And they put Cincinnati and TCU
I'm sorry that Cincinnati beating Memphis doesn't get me turned on for a college football playoff match.
Bro,
like it just doesn't. Like you beat the out of Memphis. Congratulations. Bro. Here's your participation.
They put Michigan State in over 2015 Ohio State.
It's tough.
I mean, nobody
TCU didn't deserve to get in though. Like TCU, maybe they didn't. They got in and won a game. Like okay, they got plummeted in the national championship, but they got in and won a game.
I mean, sure, we'll give you that. I'll give you the TCU one. You won a game.
Well, no, I don't care that. That's fine if you want to do it that way.
Some of my biggest problem has been like you're telling me the year Cincinnati got in. I understand. I think Bama had 2 losses at that point. Like I get it. And Ohio State, I think, had 2 losses.
Well, Bama got in and just
I get it.
Cincinnati.
But I'm telling you right now, I think those 2 teams over Cincinnati a couple of years ago would have been better matchups on TV. And I think last year, I think they got it right. I think Northwestern wound up. What were you going to do? Or not Northwestern, TCU. What were you going to do is keep them out? Like. I'm with you. I understand that. I think they got it wrong in the fact that it should have been Ohio State and Michigan and then TCU and Georgia. We could have gotten that 63-pointer out of the way, and then we could have had a real matchup in the national championship. I think that's a debate. But I just think every year you tell us it's the 4 best teams, and then we go back and we look, and there's 7 or 8 teams that or at least 3 teams. I'll give you 3 teams that every single year we look at and say, well, over the 4th-ranked team, here's 3 teams I've given you that would have competed with the national champion better.
Can I just say this real quick, Jeff? If we're going to do that, stop playing the college football season and just take the 6 biggest brand names and give me 4 of them. If we're going to
great argument.
If you don't have to play and you're going to tell me that a 2-loss Alabama deserves 2-loss Texas deserves to get in over Cincinnati because Texas might be better than Cincinnati, then let's just stop playing college football regular season. And nothing matters. You don't have to play and take the 8 biggest brands and just give me 4 teams from that and let Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, and any 2 others, USC, in Oklahoma, and just pick 4 of those teams every year to compete for a national championship.
I'll do you one better. The requirement, I think, should change, especially since we're going. Had it stayed 4 teams, I think it should have changed. If a team like Cincinnati wants to prove you're worthy, and I think this should be for any team, Bama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Northwest Mountain State, Missouri, Blue Mountain State, I don't care who, Cincinnati, scheduled teams. Everybody has to schedule a tough schedule. Everybody. No more playing Mercer. No more playing these BS schools. You have to schedule a tough team. You have to beat 2 ranked teams, 2 top 25 teams.
But
that's all done now. That's all done now.
But I think Cincinnati, because I think the problem I have with these teams,
Cincinnati got put in the playoffs because they said at the beginning of the season, if Cincinnati beats Notre Dame, we're putting them in the playoffs. Everybody remembers that. It was a big, giant crock of shit. Everybody said if Cincinnati beats,
I'm not trying to go back and pass. My problem, it all led me to the point of like the committee tells you it's the 4 best teams, but then they calculate 187,000.
I totally agreed.
And they're not really. That's fine. I don't care if you do that. Just don't lie to me.
So you know where
about the 4 best teams.
Where y'all are coming from? You know where y'all are coming from? Y'all are coming from a point. Y'all like helmets more than y'all like playing it out on the field.
No, I've said this. How many times have I said this, Mo?
But you want to see like Ohio State in because their helmet gives them more respect because they've played more respectable teams. Then if the helmets matter, just take the 8 most important helmets that keep the brand together and pick 4 of them to play.
Isn't that what I've said with these giant conferences?
I've said this from the jump.
We're there now.
I've never thought Notre Dame's a popular helmet. I've never thought Notre Dame should have been in there in the years that they were in. What I'm sick and tired of doing, and I understand it happens. This is why I'm sorry, Walker. I know you're probably going to be listening to this, but I didn't buy into Walker's hype of Ole Miss. I never thought they stood a chance. Now, did I think they were going to get blown out the way that they did versus Georgia? No, but I didn't think they were a real team versus a real competitor. My problem is I'm sick and tired of having to watch college football on January 1st and be excited, but knowing that one of them is going to be a 63-7 win when there could have been 2 or 3 other teams, whether it's
that's what we're going to get.
Not, that makes it maybe not 63-7, maybe it's a 14-point win instead of a 63-7 win, and still more competitive. And I don't care what helmet you wear.
Handle your business in week 5. Handle your business in week 7. Handle your business in week 9.
Well,
handle your business in rivalry week.
Mo, here's where
we can't all play Memphis and make it to the conference.
That's
USA
what I'm saying. Here's where
I'm just saying.
Here's why I side with Mo, though. It's going to change next year, but not a lot.
Yeah,
that ought to be said when the season starts. Like it ought to be said. Like it ought to be either just like the NFL, it's like your record, or when the season starts, it ought to be like you're getting this much credit for this game. When LSU lost to Florida State, they should have been told right then like how much it mattered. When Texas beat Alabama, they should have been told like how much it mattered. But that's not what I'm with Stu as far as the committee tells us. Like, oh, we don't care about any of that. We're just looking at the 4 best teams, and yet there's not a 1-loss team. Like, so well, real quick. So here's what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about
topic.
No, that's great. This is the topic. We're going to talk about who you guys think is going to survive. Actually make the playoffs real quick out of the top. We've got it down to 8. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the expansion next year, because I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about what this year would look like. I think that'd be kind of fun. And then we're going to get into Stu's rankings different. So who survives? Mo, who do you think, just gut feeling, is actually going to make the college football playoff?
Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Florida State. I just think by default, Florida State finishes undefeated. I think by default, they're not going to be tested.
Okay.
I don't know if Washington survives this week, let alone I don't know if they survive a rematch against Oregon on a neutral field. You snuck one out, game-winning drive at home. All the momentum in the world to be able to win that game at home. You will be playing this game in Las Vegas. Things are going to change a little bit. I think Oregon's a lot better. And I could see Oregon winning that game and getting left out because Ohio State wins the Big 10. Texas wins the Big 12 and beat Alabama. Georgia just wins the SEC, finishes undefeated. No questions asked there. And Florida State finishes undefeated and wins the ACC. I don't know. Could Florida State lose? Sure, because they had possible losses. Like they have games where we thought they should have lost. But at the end of the day, all that matters, if you keep winning, whether it's barely, but you're the 13-0 ACC champ and you're Florida State, you're not getting in over a 1-loss conference champ. I don't care who it is. You're undefeated and won a Power 5 conference. So that's who I got.
Stu, who do you think is going to survive this real quick? We'll reconvene next week and it can change, but just this week, who do you think your gut feeling is?
I think it's Georgia, Michigan, in my opinion, Oregon, and then Ohio State. I think Oregon Oregon winds up winning the Pac-12. I think the committee likes Oregon more than they do Florida State, in my opinion. I kind of agree with you. I think they want them in there. I think they'll look at it and they'll say, listen, you beat a Washington team who beat you earlier in the year, who's got a high-powered offense, who's potentially got the Heisman Trophy front runner.
You get your lick back, so you kind of cancel out your loss. You do.
So I think an undefeated conference champ in Florida State is just on the outside looking in. I think they do value Ohio State. I think they really, really, really are setting up a scenario where it doesn't matter if you beat Michigan in the game. I think they're setting it up to where it doesn't matter. Those two teams are in. It's just a matter to me of who that 4th team is. I think you're going to have maybe a 4 or 5 team.
It's crazy,
debate over that. But I think it's Oregon, because I think outside of Michigan, Oregon is the only other team. Obviously Georgia. So I mean, Georgia's excluded from this. What I'm about to say, but when we talk about, I said it was Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, and Oregon. out of Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon, I think Oregon outside of Michigan is the only team that can beat you in multiple ways, to where you look at it and you say, man, like
I'm not sure Michigan can beat you in multiple ways.
I mean, they just ran it 32 straight times and showed you they could beat you 32 straight times.
I'm gonna be honest.
They can.
I don't want to go down this road just yet.
They can throw the football, and they're very good defensively. I think Oregon. I think Oregon's physical. Oregon's very physical. I think they can beat you defensively. They're improving and getting very, very good at the run game. And then let's not ignore the fact that Bo Nix is still a dude. I understand what happened at Auburn, but given any shot, he can play good football. And outside, they're getting faster on the outside at wide receiver. I just think you talk about a team that can do some damage, and you want to talk about other teams. I think Florida State gets the break speed off of them no matter who they play. I think it's like put Notre Dame in there a couple of years ago, where it's not even going to be close. So I don't even want to see them in there.
Dang, shots fired.
Texas maybe, but it depends on if Sark decides he wants to be a good coach or a bad coach. There's just some things going on to where I look at it, I think Oregon's the most viable competitor.
I think we all can agree we could see Texas folding in this scenario and not being a one-loss conference champ. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying they will. I think we all could see from even what Stu said, Sark deciding whether he could decide in the Big 12 championship game that he didn't want to be a good head coach again against the
No, that's fair. I agree. I've got Oregon in and I've got Michigan in. But I've got Alabama in, and then I've got Florida State in.
I don't want to see Florida. I've
said it all year. I honestly think Michigan can beat Ohio State this year. And I don't know. I don't want to say but one word, Common Cord. I'm just saying it. Like I think I give Ohio State a chance, but I just think that last season, Ohio State was a better team. This season, I think all around the matchup's bad. Ransom being out is ginormous. Egbuka's not who he was. I don't think that McCord and Harrison without Mine Williams can go in there and tough it out in Ann Arbor. So I'm picking Michigan. Mo, just hold up, Mo. Say the remix. So that's how I got. And I think Alabama. I think Milroe has turned the corner. I think Alabama's going to beat Georgia, and mostly because of the pressure of being the two-time defending champ. I think that is going to come into effect in the second half of the game. It just feels like one of those scenarios to where, like, I don't like to believe in like all that stuff, but it just feels like it might be a scenario where it's too big for this Georgia team and Alabama gets them. I just don't know how you can keep Florida State out, and they want Oregon in. They're dying to put Oregon in. And here's what I'm saying. If Ohio State loses to Michigan, they're not going to look good doing it. There's no way it's going to be like they looked in that Georgia game last year. They're going to look bad doing it. They're going to score 13 points. They're going to get a bunch of sacks. They're not going to look good in a matchup against any of these other teams. So that's why I call it that way as we stand right now.
I just want to say this real quick, because you kind of hit on the point, and while Stu was spitting the gospel for the most part, I think he said one false statement. And I'm going to be honest, everybody come Monday was looking over this fact and glossing over it was so impressive that Michigan ran the ball 32 times. They just took it. They took your hearts out. You know why they decided to do that? Because those first two drives, when they let J.J. McCarthy throw 8 passes, guess what? Penn State looked like they could win the game.
I'm not even arguing that, Mo. I'm not even arguing. We're not even talking about
Michigan Oregon could beat you a bunch of different ways. I do think Oregon can, because they've done it. They've grudged them out. They've beat you high flying, high powered. They've ran the ball. They beat you up on defense. However you want. Michigan, on the other hand, they do get a lot of credit. Hey, you beat Penn State, because Ohio State got credit for beating Penn State. I don't think beating Penn State on the road is a bad win. I'm not taking anything away. All I'm saying is I think we're over-exaggerating the fact that they ran 30-something times, because when they started out coming out throwing, guess who looked like they were going to win the game? Penn State. So I
totally agree. I don't
think they could beat you in all different facets of the game.
I think that
they'll win. If they can't, they don't win the game.
Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State are the same team. Honestly, they're the same team this year, but no, I don't think any of them are like they have that next gear that Ohio State had last year with CJ Stroud. I think Ohio State in the Big Ten was the only team that had that next gear last year.
And who's the only guy on the show that when CJ Stroud was getting hate mail, maybe Mo was with me, but
I've loved CJ Stroud.
I'm going to tell you this.
I had a couple Ohio State fans. Not to mention,
he ain't got no gold pants. He ain't getting no credit from me. I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm just saying he may have lost to Michigan, but I told you
he lost to Georgia too, and Oregon.
People question whether he had that dog in him. He came out versus Georgia and had that dog in him.
How many times are we going to do this?
He did. Anyway. He did lose all the big games. He did.
So
yeah,
that was our prediction. So we're going to do a what if real quick right before we get to Stewart's show. We kind of added this what if, and what I mean by what if is if it was the 12 team. Now, again, this is what's really important. If you're not a college football crazy person like we are, what the 12 team playoff next year is not the 12 best teams in America. That is not how we're doing this. It is a mixture of conference champs. That's a different. We're not doing that tonight. I wish we could. We'll do it in the off season. It is a mixture of conference champs. I think it's a group of 5, and then some at-large bids.
No, actually, Jeff, just to enlighten you,
go ahead. Tell me all you got.
They changed it. They pitched. They're waiting to finalize the vote. So what they did was they took the Power 5 conference champs are in. Okay. The other 7 are the 7 best teams. They're just 7 at-large bids. So group of 5 is not guaranteed to get in.
Still fair. So, but what we do know is I'm trying. Are there 4 teams that get a bye? Correct. And then there's 4. Yeah, there's 4. So all I'm trying to point out here is this season. Let's just keep it how it is now. This will be the easiest way to do that. Well, we can't. Well, yeah. Let's just do this how it is now. We'll say Georgia wins, so they got a bye. We'll give Ohio State a bye. We give Florida State a bye. We're going to give Washington a bye. So this will just make this theory easier. So what we would have is, let's see, so at that point, we'll say the 5 seed would be Michigan. So the 12 seed will be going to the 5 seed. So right now, we'd have Penn State going to Michigan, which sucks because that didn't work for this. And so then you have Oregon would be the 6 seed. Let's keep them at the 6 seed. You'd have, how is Oregon State going to Oregon? Okay, so this is not working out. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is we'd have home playoff games. So there's a scenario to where like Oregon could be traveling to Michigan in there. We'll say an Oklahoma jumps up because of a great performance. They could be traveling to Missouri or something like that. Like that's what we're going to have next year in the first week of this. I think it's going to be really, I think to me, everybody tried to tell me that how it would take away from the regular season, all this. I look at this right now with 2 weeks left in the season. And if you told me I got an extra 2 weeks of playoff football with this 12 or, whatever combination, even down to LSU, like let's say LSU squeaks in because of losses and you got LSU going to Michigan. Like who doesn't sign up to watch LSU at Michigan in a playoff game?
Yeah. You know who loses in that scenario though? You know who loses? The 4 teams that get a bye. You know why they lose? Because you lose all that money for playing.
Well, they've talked about that, and those teams have complained about that. I don't think we talked about it. Like, I don't think they did that right with the buys, but that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm just saying you lose out because you like, let's say Michigan plays LSU at Michigan, right? Or Ohio State, but just for argument's sake, Michigan hosts a game on campus against LSU. First off, a playoff game. So first off, the TV money gonna be crazy. Second off, you're making you're making millions of dollars on that matchup alone because that's one more game that Michigan gets to sell out Ann Arbor. So like you really lose getting a bye because as a university and an institution, you miss out on what we talking about 30, 40, 50 million dollars as an institution because you're so good. Like you don't even get rewarded for being so good. So I feel like to be one of the top 4 teams and get a bye, there's got to be some money incentive for like the conference champ or whatever, for the simple fact you're coughing up 30, 40 million dollars on a Saturday by being one of the 4 best teams. They do that part.
Here's my thing, and this is what I want to everyone, especially you two on the show, when I was against the college football playoff, tried to tell me that it answers a lot of questions, right? Like it solves a lot of the problems. To me, we've opened the door, I think, now to where this is going to get out of hand. The 12-team playoff is great, but then we're going to start debating between is the 12th ranked Oregon State really that much better than 15th ranked LSU? Same questions we're having now
Yeah, but
about
here's the
Texas
thing
and
though.
everybody else.
I think
When you leave it to 7 at-large bids and who the 7 best teams are in the country, then it's going to get pushed. Well, let's extend it to 16 teams, and then let's extend it to 20 teams, and then you start getting a little
but I
carried
don't think
away.
It won't.
I'm damn near 50 years old. I ain't worried about that. I'm just being totally honest. Like I ain't worried about that.
I think first of all,
it is going to be 16 teams because of what Mo said. All these teams are going to want a home game.
I think it's a year late. We've already stated that. I think next year is going to be a bit of a not the opener. I think that they're going to want. I really don't think it's going to go. It's going to go a lot like I thought it would last year. I think there's going to be a lot of blowouts early. That doesn't mean I'm right. Let me say that. That doesn't mean I'm going to be right.
Well, I guess I don't. Okay,
this won't work.
Wrong, because some of these teams that would be in it now, what this 12-team playoff would look like now would be the most competitive you would get it. And I think next year you're looking at how good all these teams are. But let's take the top 12 teams and look at everything they're losing. Some of those teams are going to be young. Some of those teams are going to be off the map and be in that rebuilding, getting talent back and being 3 or 4 loss stage again. But
LSU's going to lose Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, but for every team that does that as well, there's going to be like Missouri. Look at Missouri's climb to the, I don't want to say the top, but look how good, like, okay, you might lose LSU for a year, but Missouri's going to be there at 10-2. Like you're getting some.
What about last year? Last year, Utah should have had a shot at the national championship.
And Utah would have competed. I felt like
Utah.
There are examples of where like it would have worked. I think this year could have been the year where like had they rolled it out this year, all of you would have been like, "See, suck it, Stu. We told you this was." And I'm not saying that like next year I'm not saying it won't wind up working out, but I'm thinking the big thing. There's a lot of people who are still, questioners of the 12-team playoff. And is this going to work? How is this going to work? That feel the same way I feel about the blowouts. I think next year there will be more of those.
I guess the whole blowout argument is.
But my thing is, and I'm with you now. Like you guys have convicted me. You've convinced me. I've moved on. I'm on the 12-team playoff train. Let's do it. But my point is, I think it's going to be 2 or 3 years down the road before we have like a real competitive college football playoff like we would have had.
But the competitiveness is going to come because the players are going to spread out. Like it has nothing to do with the amount of teams in it.
I think NIL did that. I agree with Mo what he said earlier. I think NIL did that.
Well, yeah, you don't have
more
to tell
so
me.
than the college football playoff.
We did a show. Mo did a show on it that night, and we told you this is what's going to happen.
That's why the playoffs. Here's the thing, real quick before we get into Stu. The thing about it is, here's why Missouri's good this year and look like they're going to be good over the next couple of years. Not just NIL. NIL and the transfer portal changes that, but the projection of the simple fact that if I commit to Missouri this year and I'm a freshman next year, or I was a freshman last year, thug it one more year. Who cares about my freshman year anyway? Yep. I may not play. If my sophomore, my junior, and maybe my senior year, but for the studs, my 2 years of production is my sophomore, junior year are the most important, and I get to be seen. And now in the 12-team playoff, why not go to Missouri where I know I'll start and they got something cooking instead of everybody flooding Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, and Georgia? You've already seen Missouri has 5-star recruits that we've never thought of for that NIL in the 12-team playoff.
The last argument I have is, Stu, you understand better than anybody. You saw Butler compete for a national championship twice because they had a chance to.
But
that's just the truth of it.
But my thing is this: if
there was only 4 teams,
but I've argued
basketball, like Butler would never.
I've argued this so much so, and because we have the data to prove it, the data has been on my side when I've talked about the college football playoffs, and what I'm saying is the data in March Madness has shown you when it comes to March the level between the top ranked team in the country and overall and the 16 seed that they're playing really isn't that large. Like we've seen that in March Madness.
Yeah, but
hang on.
Let's just say this.
But what we've seen from the number 1 team in the country and the number 4 team, not the 16 seed, the 4 seed has been blowout after blowout
But we
after
also
blowout, with
we
the
also
exception
saw
of last year.
but it's not really been that bad. Like we've also saw like the Clemson Alabama rivalry was
But that was
great.
1 and 2, wasn't it?
We saw Ohio State, who everybody said shouldn't get in, beat two teams that we saw
But
Florida
that's
State,
Ohio
who
State. But
we
we've
saw the
seen Notre
returning.
Dame coming get boat raced.
Yeah, but
We've
it's one
seen
time. Like you're going to have
TCU.
blowouts.
We've seen
You're going to have blowouts.
TCU
You're
go
never
get
going to stop having
boat
blowouts.
raced.
There's going to be a blowout this year. One of these teams that we're sitting here saying right now is really, really good is going to get their doors blown off in the playoffs, because when you
Maybe,
go,
but my point becomes like if
I think it's
you
more the
allow more
situation.
great teams, and I do think more so now, and I think Mo makes a good point, and as I've thought about it, it's become the reason I've been more proponent of the college football playoff is March Madness has been going on for like 100 years, right? So we've had the opportunities for teams like Butler to say,
okay, I think
we're
you missed
not
my
that
point on
far from
Butler.
Duke.
Let
We're
me
just getting close. We're just now starting that 12 seed. So I do think eventually 20, 30 years from now, the difference between the 1 seed and the 12 seed isn't going to be that
2
large.
years from now.
But
2
for
years from now.
right now, the 1 seed and the 12 seed, there's a 14, 15 point, 16 point difference, if not closer to 30 or 40 point difference in the teams that play. We just saw that with the 12 team going down to the 1 team and getting absolutely
There is
murdered.
no way on earth that Ohio State beats
Ole Miss got murdered by Georgia.
Okay. But what
And they
I'm
were the
saying is
what? 12.
there
They were the
there
12th
is no
ranked team
way
in the
on the
country.
planet, no way on the planet that Ohio State beats Ole Miss by more than maybe a touchdown.
Okay,
Like
but we're talking.
It's closer than you think. Michigan does not beat Mizzou by 20 points. Like maybe double. If they get to double digits, I'd be surprised.
You just watched Georgia beat what? Missouri by what? 10?
Yeah.
And that was really because of an interception late in the game that basically gave them to they were up 3, and Missouri was about to start marching to try and win the game. They throw an interception, but that was a dogfight. And Missouri at the time was ranked like 10, 11.
Missouri would give
all these are things that I'm telling. Like what I'm getting at is like
the gap's not as big as you think.
No, we're agreeing with you. Don't let TCU and Cincinnati in. Like
because
we're agreeing with that.
But that's the difference. That's what I'm saying. Like the difference between like a Cincinnati and TCU and Duke and Kansas in college basketball
Honestly, no,
may not be that large.
Let me clarify what I meant about college basketball.
Which is why VCU can make a Final Four run, because the gap,
because they have less players.
That's why isn't that large.
It is that large. All it takes is basketball.
No, here's what I'm saying. My point on Butler was because they did it twice, and what I mean is to add to what Mo said. Those kids at Butler were like, man, we've got a chance. If we stick with this, we can do it. And that's what he's saying about college football, is to where like Missouri might be like, let's run this back and give ourselves a chance. That's what I meant about a team that I'm comparing Butler to. Like, a Butler was a very good program, but like if you shorten the amount of teams in, why would they stick it out, as opposed to like if you give them some hope, they're like, okay, let's stick this out. Let's run this back.
Well, let me commit to Missouri and not Alabama.
That's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with like Mo right now. Missouri looks up and they're like, Georgia's losing these players. I think if we stick together, man, we can really, like Duke right now in football could be like, man, if we really run this back, I think we got a shot to make the playoffs. That's what I meant, not comparing like the underdog story. So now we're going to get to.
My big thing is too, and I think my big thing too is,
I think
we're going to have to change how we start judging. We're going to have to change how we start judging teams. And what I mean by that is,
I agree.
What I mean by that is, in college,
you think these people ought to start watching the games? I think the committee ought to probably.
In college basketball, Bill Self could make the tournament every single year, even if it's as the 14 seed or a 12 seed, and keep his job because he made the tournament. If Bama makes the tournament as the 12th team in the country 3 years in a row, they're ready to run Nick Saban out of town. Like we got to start. If we're going to expand, and you want to say, hey, it's just good enough to make the college football playoff to give yourself a shot. Gotcha. Then we've got to start change. Oh, hey, look, Missouri's made it 3 years in a row. They haven't won the national championship. Missouri's head coach is a really, really good head coach. Let's extend this.
Expectation is different based on program. Missouri,
I also think that's
enough winning a playoff game. You will keep your job making the playoffs and winning a playoff game. You've never been elite in football. The expectation on certain jobs is.
Let's talk. Let's go back to my Bill Self thing that I brought up. If Bill Self makes the 14 seed at Kansas the next 3 years, and he makes the college, or he makes the March Madness, it doesn't matter because he made the March Madness. you
If he
have
makes
a shot. You have a shot to compete for a national championship.
If
If Nick
he's the
Saban
first
for the next 3
year
years is the 12th ranked Alabama team, he's getting fired.
But listen to me here. This is, and then we'll move on to Stu's rankings. I promise. I love this conversation we're having. I think it's one of the best I've heard all year. Here was always my point, and we're all agreeing that we want the 12 teams. Always my point on it was once you expand it, you'll actually be able to stabilize programs, and each program will be able to get better. And I think your coaching thing is a great point, because if I'm Leopold at Kansas right now, or Oregon's coach, who everybody thinks that they can drag to Texas A&M for all this money, this is what I like about Mo's point. If I'm the coach of Kansas right now, football, I'm like, I can make the playoffs next year. I don't have to go to whatever a second tier SEC team or a second tier Big Ten team. I don't have to go to Wisconsin. I don't have to go to, Ole Miss, whatever team. I can stay at Kansas. And if we're good enough, like, I can get into that playoff. And then he's like, if I get into that playoff, I can win. Like, I know I can outcoach the other team. I just got to get a chance. So this is what I'm saying is I think these programs can start keeping it. If they can just keep one quarterback, if they can just keep one great coach for one more year and build on that, the next thing you know, now you've got more. I really think that it's going to make, we've already saw it with NIL. We saw it with the transfer portal. We have more good teams because the talent has a chance to thrive. Like all the teams we're talking about, we got Penix, we got Nix, we got Daniels, we got all these guys who got a chance in a better position that we have better teams now. We got Ewers transfer from Ohio State. His team might make the playoffs. Like all these players.
Those programs will stop being stepping stones. They'll stop being stepping stones.
That's the way to say it. Thank you for saying that.
Kansas.
What if Cincinnati, if we had 12 teams, maybe Fickle stays at Cincinnati. That's my point in this.
And like, you don't think like Jalen Daniels, and I'm just, and then we'll move on. But you don't think a guy like Jalen Daniels, and you know what? He's a bad example because he's been hurt. Who's a top tier quarterback that could transfer? I don't know. We'll just say Jalen Daniels just because. You don't think Jalen Daniels is like licking his chops at the simple fact, like, man, I've been balling at Kansas, but man, if it wasn't expanding to 12, it was top 4. You don't think he's licking his chops at 100%. A possibility of like, I could go to Ohio State,
absolutely,
starting quarterback, and go to the playoffs and get drafted differently, get looked at differently, because he would look at Kansas as a stepping stone and he can legally transfer. But now you don't do that because you're like, you know what? If we make the playoffs, hey, I can stay here. Maybe I can.
And what does that do? It takes a player out of a high. We'll just do that. I love that comparison because I think that's an apt comparison. Because we'll say Murphy at Texas can absolutely have a shot at Ohio State starting job next year. But what if he's like, man, I can kind of stick around here. Who knows what'll happen? My team might go to the playoffs.
And coaches,
we'll just say, like, instead of transferring to Ohio State or Alabama or whoever, that player stays. That also takes a player out of Ohio State, Alabama's hands. So that brings Ohio State down 2 notches, takes that team up 2 notches. Now we have more competitive balance. I really think it's no different than free agency and professional sports, what it did to even out the playing field.
Yeah.
I really think that if you can keep coaches in place and a couple star players in place, it's gonna be better. So now we gotta move. Okay, go ahead.
Steve. Yeah, let's move on.
No, you sure? I'll give you the last thought on it.
Yes. No, we're good.
Okay, that was a great conversation. I loved it. We're gonna move on to earlier this week, Stu put out his top 15 college football rankings, and I want to vouch for Stu before we talk about this. Before I put him up here, like, he puts his heart into it. Right. He believes in them. Like, this isn't like clickbait. Like, this is his actual top 15. Go ahead before we start talking.
And I will say, one Ohio State fan said that these were the most accurate rankings he's seen. Another one told me I was delusional. So there's that.
And both of them are on this show.
Listen,
they're both on the show.
I'm just going to say, I got my facts straight. I went and made sure I don't look stupid.
First of all, my favorite part about being back with the network and being back full time is just hearing Mo going, let me just say, which Mo never just says anything. None of us do this, but it's so funny that a bunch of podcasters are always like, I just got one more thought. Like, no, you don't. That's why you do it every week. So we're going to talk about Stu's rankings. So he's got, Stu, you got Georgia #1, Michigan #2. Now we'll start deviating. We got Washington 3. We got Oregon 4. So I just want to put out there, Washington 3, Oregon 4, OSU 5, FSU, Florida State 6, Alabama 7, Texas 8, who lost to Alabama, just adding to the audience here. Louisville 9, Oregon State 10, Missouri 11, Ole Miss 12, Penn State 13, LSU 14, Oklahoma 15. So, Stu, I'll lead you into this, then we'll ask you the questions, then I'll let Mo ask the differences also. The biggest difference we see right away, I don't really care about Michigan at 2, whatever. Like, they're 3 in the other one. Washington at 3, as to where the playoff committee has them out of the top 4. What do you see in Washington that you like so much at number 3?
A battle tested team. I think that they've beaten a team in number 5, like Oregon, and they did it in a pretty good. They played a pretty good game. Their offense didn't deviate. They didn't, any of that type of stuff. Now they've struggled in some of these games and their defense isn't as great as you would like for it to be, which is why I said when you had me pick earlier in the show, that's why I picked Oregon to make the college football playoffs and not Washington, because I do think Oregon has the better defense. I do think they can beat you in more ways, but I think out of the 4 teams, if you get into a shootout, like I look at the 4 teams that I have on my ranking, and I say, all right, if this happens to turn into a shootout, the only quarterback I want on my team is number 9 at Washington, because he's the only one out of those 4 quarterbacks who I think is the better quarterback on the field as opposed to the other team. I
would love to have you guys back to do again, side note, transfer quarterback Michael Penix. I would love to have you guys back just talk about how we feel about the quarterback situation after the season's over.
And then you talk about DeBoer, what he did at Indiana, and then what he's done now at Washington. Same with Michael Penix. I just look at all this and I think DeBoer's 111 as a coach. As a head coach, he's 111 already. Like, this is a guy who's shown you what he can do. He's proven it, those types of things. I do have questions about the defense, but I think Washington's the 3rd best team in the country. They've been the 3rd best team in the country since they've been cooking.
So
since they beat Oregon, they've been the 3rd best team in the country.
Before I let Mo ask his question, so you have Oregon going to the playoffs, but you have Washington at number 3 right now. So it feels like you think Oregon's
the head-to-head
feels like
right now.
But it feels like you think
they're
Oregon's going to beat Washington in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yes, I think Oregon's the better all-around team. Now, if you ask me who's the better all-around team, it's Oregon. But right now, I have to give Washington the advantage because they have the head-to-head matchup.
I'm going to ask one more quick question, then I'm going to let Mo ask his question because I'm pretty sure that's going to take up the rest of the time. Because I think here's what I think. I'm going to preface all this by saying this. I think Alabama, you're close or fine. Texas is fine, even though they beat Alabama. I still agree with it because of injuries and everything. And then the 9 through 15 are great. Honestly, I think you did really good. I think Penn State at 13 I still think that it's a bit of a gift to them, but everybody tells me how good their defense is. I suppose they've earned it. And then the rest of it, again, a good 15 just all around, like just a lot of really good teams in here. Like nobody's signing up to play Oklahoma is what I'm saying. So my question before Mo goes is, you got FSU at 6. Nobody really in the country has FSU out of the top 4 because
Joel Klatt has them at 8, but I have them at 6.
Undefeated. Oh, I missed Joel's. Okay. So undefeated, beat LSU, good victory. What is it about on the football side of it? Not the I know you're not, like I said, you're not drumming up clickbaits on the football side of it. What is it about FSU that you have them at 6 behind Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Oregon, OSU?
Out of the top 6 teams in the country, they're the most inconsistent. I mean, you're constantly in one score battles, not with tough teams, with average teams, with teams like Miami that you should have gone in and beaten the brakes off of, and instead you're in battles. And it's not like it's just one game. Like, that's been throughout the year.
That was at home too, by the way, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And they've been in constant one score battles with teams that, like,
Boston College.
Like, everybody keeps telling me, like, we all wait for this, like, hey, this is the game where they've arrived game. Like, we all wait on those, like, hey, this is the game where they've had multiple times to prove that's them, and they haven't done it. They're the most inconsistent team out of the top 6, and that scares me overall as where I rank them personally.
You're a quarter. I want to talk about FSU for a second. I know Mo loves Florida schools. That's his favorite topic. I want to talk about FSU for a second. So some things I see is like, you're a quarterback guy. Like how good's their quarterback? As much as I like him, and he
Let
comes
me
up
say
big
this.
and he's gritty. I want to talk a little bit about their quarterback because like all these teams, like you got to start ranking quarterbacks. That's going to be the difference in moving forward.
I did drop my draft rankings for the quarterbacks like earlier this week or last week.
Yes, you
I did forget about Jordan Travis. So apparently I'm not very
going.
So apparently I'm not very good at my job, or maybe has he already declared that he's not going to the draft?
No, it doesn't matter.
We're just saying he's not going.
That's why I said that. He
can't play any in it.
Well, I agree, but people
Smith.
I will say I got a lot of crap for not having Jordan Travis in there.
I'm about to fight Mo.
I think
Off
he's a
camera,
good.
Me and Mo's fighting.
I think he's a good college quarterback. I think he's all right. Hey, here's the
Is that
thing.
the worst insult you can throw at a good player? Is that a good
my problem with Jordan
Yeah.
Travis comparing to Mac Jones. My problem with Jordan Travis is a lot of what you asked about CJ Stroud is what I have to ask about Jordan Travis is, does he have that dog in him? If it comes down to, hey, it's 28-24, there's a minute 30 left, Florida State has the football to win this game and to go to the college football playoff to beat Ohio State, or to go to the national championship to beat Ohio State, do I trust Jordan? I don't. I really don't. I'm sorry. I don't think Travis, I don't trust him. I trust the other 5 quarterbacks more, but I look at it. I just think they're the most inconsistent.
You like Kyle
team.
McCord more than Jordan Travis
right now.
He's
done
now.
it.
Really?
He's done it. He's done.
I just my thing is I don't love him, and I think out of the top 5 teams, he's the weakest quarterback on that ranking.
Really? Okay.
I don't think he's been what everyone said he was going to be. Oh, he had that pre-connection with Marvin Harrison from high school. Well, guess what? We haven't seen it. It doesn't matter. Congrats. You threw great balls.
Are you just
Michigan State? Every team in the country. I'm sure Division II school out.
I got to ask the question.
Would
I got to ask
against
Stu,
Michigan State.
Stu, I got to ask a question.
Trash can. But
so anybody's watching the video, Stu, how many times do you get asked for a Kyle McCord autograph? Does that happen?
Someone else mentioned it the other day.
Dude,
someone else mentioned it.
It's actually a little upsetting.
My wife just started a job as a teacher, and her teacher friend was like, "Hey, have you seen Ohio State's quarterback? Like Stewart looks just like him." I was like, "God, they give me that crap at the."
So do you know?
Too.
So Stu, just so you know, teachers are.
I was first.
Okay, so let me tell you something. This is a side note. Everybody over here, camera 2. Nurses get all the reputation for being crazy. Teachers are wild. That's all I'm saying. And we'll move on. Teachers can be wild.
That's why they're 6. I don't trust their quarterback that great. I don't trust.
Stu's such a pro. He's right back.
That team. So,
okay, I like it. I like it. So, real quick, and then Mo gets to ask the question that he wants to ask. Milroe, where do you have him at quarterback as we speak? Because I love what he's doing, and it appears that it's just with his legs, but it's really not. His arm has opened up the lanes, and he takes advantage of it with his legs, is what I'm seeing on tape. I love what the kid's done. I love how he's grown through the year. Where do you have Milroe ranked in this top 10 here? Where do you
I think we're viewing it differently, to be honest with you, because I think, especially after that Texas game, Nick Saban sat down and said, "This isn't Tua, this isn't Bryce Young, and we have to win the way we won with AJ McCarron. We have to win the way we won with Jake Coker. We have to win the way that we won with Blake Sims, which is we're going to have to run the football and play good defense."
Remember Blake Sims?
And take away.
You remember Blake Sims?
And take away
championship off his back.
And take away the amount of times Jalen Milroe throws the football, which has allowed him to shine in the fact of the limited amount of times that he does throw, he does look good. Don't get me wrong. But they've had to revert to playing a style that they played 6 years ago, which they won a national championships doing, but we've also
Yeah,
seen
but I think the
is
difference
not
is, though,
sustainable to win this year.
those quarterbacks did it with a running back. Milroe's threat is himself. Like the
Sure, it's a lot
defenses
like
cannot come. He's creating his own space, though. I think Milroe's creating his own space. I think
sure,
Milroe, like a better comparison is like Tim Tebow, as far as like if we take
and
an
that's
extra step, this dude's going to get 20 yards on us, or
fine.
he's going to throw it over our
I'll
head.
compare it like this.
I won't
This
say
year with
Milroe's as good as Tim Tebow. I just said it on TV.
this year with well, Tim Tebow is the
I just
greatest
said it.
quarterback of all time. I wouldn't say that, but when we talk about a guy like I'll
You
do
got
it like
stats
this.
coming your way.
I'm a Colts fan, and with Anthony Richardson, like the thing with AR is this year he's shined, but he shined because you have the ability to run the football. Like if you asked him to do what CJ Stroud's doing right now, I think the flaws come out, and you're like,
Oh, no chance he can do what
not
Stroud's doing right now.
it's not as good. If they said Anthony drop back and throw the ball 30, 40, 50 times a game, like Houston's asking CJ Stroud to do, the flaws are going to show. I think the reason he shined is he has the legs. It's the same way with Milroe. Sure, it doesn't look like AJ McCarron. Sure, it doesn't look like Jake Coker, but it's still saying we're playing to your strength and taking away your weakness, which is what good teams do. But what I'm saying is he's still very inaccurate throwing the football. He's still not a guy who, if I took away the zone read, or I took away that RPO and said, beat me from the pocket, I'm drooling at the mouth at the fact that I got to rely on Milroe to beat me if I'm a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, but what team
he's
can
not
force
running
Alabama?
he's not running design runs, though. Like Jalen Milroe is not running. He's not just as soon as he snapped the ball running quarterback draw for 40 yards.
Which I understand.
But because he's improved as a thrower, last year when he stepped in for Bryce Young, literally everything you said is what they did. That's literally, he just
I would agree. And I would say
but after he got benched, he sat down and you could tell it sparked something in him because he's playing better. Is the dude going to play on Sundays?
He is playing
probably not.
Great.
He's probably not. But if you just, sometimes you got to take away what you think of them on Sundays. And I'm not saying people, you got to take away what you think about on what it looks like on Sundays and just understand sometimes guys are just JT Barrett. Sometimes guys are really good in college.
But Barrett can throw the football.
I think Milroe and Barrett are probably a very close comparison.
We'll see. I want to see one more year. I want to see one more year of it. I just think the data, the film, like, yeah, we have a whole season, but it's one season. We've seen guys have.
I don't know. Here's what I like that he's doing, and then we'll move on.
I'm gonna have to dive deeper into the film.
You're watching real quick. Sunday Eye. You take your Sunday glasses off and watch them.
What I see Milroe doing is he's hitting receivers in big open areas, which means he's seeing the field better. He's not throwing like as to where we talked about McCord is constantly throwing contested balls. I hate that. That's great. That's great. You got a pinpoint arm. You got great receivers. That works. Milroe's hitting guys when they're open. He's dumping it off and giving guys a chance to run. He's really starting to see the openings in the field. And that's what, just like Mo said, it's college quarterback. That's all you got to do to win a championship.
Yeah.
All right. So Mo, ask Stu what's on your mind. Let's talk about it. I'm gonna go grab some lunch.
How do you?
I'm gonna hit the IHOP.
We've been on long, so I'm not going. But how do you?
I apologize.
How do you sell me on Washington? You sell me on Oregon, and you tell me Ohio State does not beat neither of those teams. And here's my thing. You trust Washington in a shootout against Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State? He's beating Oregon. Cool. The difference is, guess what? In these scenarios where these teams are going to play each other, neutral fields, real home field advantage is out of it. Real, Dan Lanning handing you the ball with time left, not going to happen on a neutral field. In the crowd in your favor, not going to happen in the neutral field, in the Sugar Bowl or in the Rose Bowl or wherever you play. But you're going to tell me you trust Washington in a shootout? Literally, first off, we got to stop the Michael Penix stuff. Michael Penix is really good, but Jesus Christ, you know where he painted his name? Throwing 4 picks and having 2 good drives against Ohio State is when he became this God-gracious quarterback. He threw 4 picks in the first half, and then next thing you know, because he almost beat Ohio State, who coughed it up, he's been this great quarterback, and then he plays against these bad defenses every week in the Pac-12 because nobody plays defense in the Pac-12 outside of Oregon, and he was struggling for a little bit. Oh, in Utah, my bad, but they struggled there, got picked apart. You watch the team just get picked apart by Bryson Barnes. You watch the team only score 15 on Arizona State. You watch the team, I think Arizona's better than I thought, but still they have 3 losses. They've lost all the
Arizona's a good team.
Arizona is a good team. So when it was 31-24, I'm not going to kill them the same way because Arizona is actually not bad. You put up 15 points on Arizona State. You know what the biggest thing is? You know what they did? You go look at their schedule. We go look at the scoreboards, right? You know what they did? A playoff team let Stanford score 33 points. You won by 8. You won 41-33 against Stanford. But you're like, hey, I trust those dudes more than Ohio State.
Put an M in Stanford.
Stanford. They scored 33. You let Bryson Barnes, who literally has looked like he's the reason why Utah is not any good. And yes, he looked good against USC. I would look good right now on a bad ankle against USC. I'd pick them apart. Stu, you'd pick them apart. Jeff would drink 10 beers before the game and pick USC's defense apart. That's not saying much. Bryson Barnes just made their defense look bad, got in a shootout, and the only difference is Bryson Barnes would be by far the worst quarterback to make the playoffs in probably college football playoff history if Utah was able to make it. And you trust Washington, well, then, okay, you'll sell yourself out by like, yeah, but I do think Oregon's going to win the game. Okay, Oregon didn't. It ain't like they started off lighting up USC in the beginning, and then what happened? Caleb Williams started picking apart their defense. It started getting real close. USC started coming back. Next thing you know, Oregon's in a dogfight. And yes, they ended up winning. Give them credit, I guess. Beating USC is the pinnacle of Oregon season right now. They don't have a good win. We'll see what they look like against Oregon State. Washington, outside of beating Oregon, has really looked just, if they don't have the Oregon win, they're literally Florida State. If they don't beat Oregon, which they did, but what I'm saying, you take away that Oregon win and let's look at the rest of their schedule. Everything you say about Florida State is exactly after the Oregon game, their offense has looked stale up to this point until they got in a shootout with USC. Yeah, that's your get-right game. USC's defense is your get-right game as a quarterback. Their offense looked stale through times against Utah. Finally got it going just because Bryson Barnes can be so bad at some point. You keep giving Washington the ball, they're going to strike. I'm not sold on neither that Ohio. If you would have had Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, wouldn't be upset with you at all. I wouldn't be. But putting Washington and Oregon and basically like you would contemplate putting Florida State over Ohio State. Like the way you talk about both teams, Ohio State has out of these teams, they got the best defense in the country. They've proven it. They allowed Penn State scored 6 points on them. Now I know they finished with 12. It was literally 2 minutes left. Ohio State defense tapped out. Like, we won this game. Who cares? We'll let you get this drive. We don't care. You won't get the onside kick. You won't win this game. It won't matter. Ohio State has the best defense in the country. Michael Penix will not look like Michael Penix Jr. against Ohio State's defense. Neither will Bo Nix. I think they could get in the dogfight, and I still trust Ohio State to win in the shootout because guess what's going to matter? The thing that Washington can't do, get a stop. Washington won't stop Kyle McCord or Trevion Hitt. Kyle McCord will look like Tom Brady against Washington's defense. I'm sorry. I'm literally sorry. I've seen if Bryson Barnes can look that good, no way will I think Kyle McCord can.
Fair.
And it's not that I think Kyle McCord's great. You can't. I'm not going to sit there and watch Bryson Barnes do that and think Kyle McCord can't, because we all three would sit here and agree Kyle McCord is a better quarterback than Bryson Barnes, and we have better weapons than Utah has. And Washington not beating nobody, none of the good teams, the top 5 to 6 teams outside of Florida State, they might beat them in the shootout. They're not beating nobody in the shootout because guess what they have to do? They have to stop the other team, and Washington cannot do that. Their defense is atrocious. We talk about how bad USC's defense is. Washington's defense is literally USC's defense undefeated right now. Yeah, that's what my problem is with Washington and Oregon. If it was Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, I'm cool. The only problem I would have with you putting Michigan over Ohio State would be for the simple fact, and it's not just you. Jeff kind of doing it too, and everybody doing it. Everybody's writing off the Ohio State game as a loss already. Like, because the past 2 years happened, Ohio State's walked into the season 11-1 at best, which I don't think is fair because we're not doing that to everybody else. We're telling Georgia, we think Bama has an opportunity to beat Georgia, even though Georgia's just won the SEC the past 2 years.
Oh, it's definitely quarterback. It's quarterback only.
But it's like Ohio State walked into the season 11-1, no chance of beating Michigan. And I'm sorry, after what I saw Saturday, I'm not saying we win the game, but I'm not as nervous about playing Michigan as I was prior to. I don't think so. I don't like that Ohio
State. Your boy snapped against Michigan State.
No,
I'm sorry.
it's not about what
I'm pretty
Ohio
sure IU's quarterback threw for like 8,000
It's not
yards.
about what Ohio State looked like on Saturday. It's about what Michigan looked like. It's about the whole impressive. But either way, all I'm saying, Ohio State being at 5 is disrespectful.
All right.
Let me respond.
Allow
So
you to retort.
I'll give you the defensive thing on Washington.
Atrocious.
Yeah, I agree. Which is what I said when Jeff asked me about why I had Washington at 3, but said Oregon was going to be in the college football playoffs. I said I don't trust that defense, right? So I'll give you that. Hey, let me just answer it yes or no, and then we'll move on, and you can retort after this. If you had to choose right now, and I think you might have something in your solo cup if you answer this the way I think you're going to answer this. If right now, would you take McCord or Michael Penix?
Michael Penix.
Okay. That seals that conversation right there. So moving on. So they have the better quarterback, first of all. They have the better game managing situations. I think they have the better head coach. We've seen Ryan Day kind of wilter away in some situations.
Oh, no.
But hang on.
I don't think so.
I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. So I'll give you the Washington one. I'll give you credit for being mad about. The Oregon one, though, I think is where the real debate begins, because I do think Oregon has a real defense, unlike Washington. And you could say whatever you want. You can say Caleb Williams picked them apart, but Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. I think
Michael Penix picked them apart.
And Michael Penix is going to be a first-round pick. Kyle McCord,
overrated draft pick.
Kyle McCord at max might be a 6th-round pick, maybe a camp invite. So let's
go to the NFL.
Okay, well, that's my point. Congratulations, you got picked apart by NFL quarterbacks. It happens. Yeah, they're NFL quarterbacks. Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 overall pick. Yeah, you're going to get picked apart by the number 1 overall pick.
So you give up 30 on Texas Tech, but you got a good defense.
Hey, it happens. You can't win them all.
24 against Washington State, but you got a good defense. They got 6 losses.
Okay, so let's go to this. Let's go to the resume. Then. Everyone wants to hang on Ohio State's resume. Congratulations, you beat Notre Dame. They didn't have 12 guys, or they didn't have 10 guys on the field. That wouldn't be the case. Let's go to Penn State. Congratulations, you beat Penn State. The week later, they were taken to the final 2 minutes by Indiana.
Whoa. You got to stop there, though, because that's Michigan's only win.
Hang on.
So why isn't Washington above Michigan?
I'm not done yet. Congratulations, you beat Penn State. They went on to barely beat Indiana. It came down to the final 2 minutes. Congratulations. I don't know if you've seen, but Indiana ain't very good.
So Washington won 15-7 against Arizona State. What's the difference? You only scored 15 points against you got an interception. That's why you beat Arizona State. They're just as bad as Indiana. They suck.
Okay, and sure, that's something you can count against them. I just said I'm giving you your props. Like, yes, you're right.
Even with
now, I just think right now, like, that defense is the best defense in the country outside of Georgia's. Talking about Ohio State's.
Oh, okay. Talking about Oregon. I'm like, my God.
Talking about Ohio State, they're the best defense in the country outside of Georgia. I'll give you that. Myron Williams is hurt. TreVeyon Henderson
since returning from injury has been a top 3 running back in the country, and it's not even. He's better than your beloved Blake Corum. He's better than the beloved.
I never said I beloved Blake Corum.
No, just my point is beloved Blake Corum.
My point is, they've been okay at running the football. Like you said, the last 3 weeks they've come back. Hey, he's been good since he came back. I'll give you that. But my problem is there's one way to beat you. It's defense, and then that Marvin Harrison was supposed to be the guy. You know why he hasn't been the guy? Because his quarterback can't give him the freaking football. His quarterback, he's not had the year everybody thought he was going to have.
Bro, he's got 1,000 yards, bro.
You know, I know he's got 1,000 yards, but
he has 13 touchdowns. Like, he's been the guy. He's literally
going to win the Biletnikoff.
Sure, he will, but we've seen him. I don't know. My point is this:
minutes of failure at receiver.
He's going to be in New York.
He'll be there. He's not going to win it, but he'll be there. He'll pop up there. With Kyle McCord at quarterback, Marvin Harrison Jr. is still going to be in New York. Like, he's been the guy. We gave him we said, hey, y'all want to double.
Here's my whole point, though, about this. And
I Dan Lanning over Ryan Day.
Only because it's Michigan at number 2. It just happens to be Michigan. Like, all your negatives about Ohio State translate. So here's what I said.
But I also take into account. If
Kyle McCord, you don't want to give a ton of credit for Ohio State beating Penn State. Okay, that's fine, because I don't love Penn State either. JJ McCarthy had what 16 yards passing last week, but no. But if
1000%.
McCord
I
had,
don't trust McCarthy
if
either.
McCord had 16 yards passing, like I just don't understand. Like it doesn't seem like, but you got Michigan at 2.
Yeah, because I think overall they're a better team.
But
Overall,
what's the overall part?
Where though? Like where? You said Ohio State has the second best defense in the country. Michigan doesn't. You don't trust McCarthy. You don't trust McCord. Cool. Cancel them out. You
but McCarthy's more. I think McCarthy's more talented.
Yeah,
I think he
I'm
can
sorry,
he can
that's
throw at different angles. I think he's got the bigger arm. I think he's more mobile. I think he allows that
he's
threat.
more mobile. I'll give you that.
He allows the threat for Blake Corum to be better. Ohio State, try running an RPO with Peyton Manning back there. It's essentially what you're doing with Kyle McCord.
I do agree. I totally agree with that.
Congratulations, which allows more for Blake Corum to succeed. I think what I talked about earlier with Oregon was they can beat you running the football. They can beat you throwing the football. They can beat you with defense. They can beat you probably with special teams. I haven't seen them do it, but they probably could. Ohio State can beat you with defense. And then,
so why can't
if the run game's clicking, they can beat you with the run game.
Here's what we want
Kyle
to know.
McCord's babied enough, he can beat you. But other than that,
with one man, Marvin Harrison Jr., he would go for 200 on Oregon. I swear to God.
I disagree.
Why can't Oregon beat Michigan, but they can beat Ohio State? That's what I'm asking you.
I think Michigan's got more. I think the talent is more.
At where though? Where
quarterback is better than Kyle McCord. I think running back's better than Travion Henderson.
No.
Yes, by far.
Corum is not better than Henderson. If he's not, every time Travion Henderson's not hurt, guess what he does? When he's not injured, guess what he does? He averages 8 to 10 yards per carry. He's literally a walking first down, just like Blake Corum. We've seen Blake Corum get shut down. Travion Henderson, when he is healthy, when he is on the field, ready to play, and he's the starting running back, he is arguably the best running back in the country. And it's not me. I'm talking about, look, when he's healthy and he steps on that field, look at his numbers. He touched the ball 5 times in one game and still gave you 60 yards, over 10 yards per carry. They're not better at running back. If anything, we could cancel them out. That's fine. They definitely don't have better receivers. That's out the window. You said,
they're not even close on receivers.
Receivers
they don't have better defense. You said that.
I think their quarterback's better.
Okay, I don't think it's by far. I don't think JJ McCarthy is by far better because he picks apart. So he gets credit for picking apart Michigan State, but Kyle McCord doesn't.
Neither Kyle McCord doesn't get credit for picking apart Michigan.
He looked better.
What's he getting credit for?
Than McCarthy did. What does he get credit for?
Michigan's played one game. Michigan's played one game.
But there's a difference between like talent and production.
You know what you're talking about? Zach Wilson. You sound like a Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson in college. Everybody was in the world. Hey, everybody was jizzing their pants over Zach Wilson in college. But my point is this:
talent has to produce. And if you're telling me that his talent produced against Michigan State, if you're telling me that his talent produced against Rutgers and everybody else, when Kyle McCord is producing the same, he's putting the same production against Michigan State, against Rutgers, he didn't do good against Indiana first game of the season, first start. Who cares?
But I won't give him that.
If he's
McCord's had the same season as McCarthy. Like they're literally the same.
If he's producing and driving you down the field on a game-winning drive against Notre Dame on the road in an environment, in an atmosphere he's never been in as a starting quarterback, everything that you're saying JJ McCarthy is doing, it just looks nice because he throws the ball sideways and Kyle McCord is straight to the point, bullet pass in a hole for Marvin Harrison.
It's not necessarily that. It's the fact of like Jeff said, when he was talking about old boy down there in Alabama, Milroe, it's there. He can see the whole field.
I think Milroe's better than both of them.
Like Milroe can see. Hang on, Milroe can see the whole field, right? Like he talks about hitting in the wide open holes. He even said himself, Jeff did, that the throws from McCord are in tight windows. Every throw is that way. It seems like every throw, and it is what it is. You can say, "Oh, those are big league throws," and they are. But I don't know. My biggest concern is
feels like it's more so trusting your talent at wide receiver than I think big throws. It's like if I just put it near Marvin Harrison Jr., even if it's a bad pass, if I put it near Marvin Harrison Jr., then he gets it. So I don't really think it's like, he throws amazing balls. It's just like, bro, I'm throwing to Marvin Harrison.
The only win I'm giving them credit for right now is Penn State. Because I think the Notre Dame win was a fluke. I really do.
Yeah, but Michigan doesn't have more than Penn State.
And I'm with but I think Oregon right now is a better team overall.
It feels like you should have Washington ahead of Michigan if you're good by your criteria.
Maybe, but my point is I think they're a better team right now than Ohio State is. Does that mean come the end of the year, Ohio State's the better team? I don't know. I want to see how they play versus Michigan, who I think is a top 2 team in the country. Beat them, and I will eat my words, no questions asked. But I'm looking at it right now, and I don't think they're that good of a team as far as we talk about college football playoff teams. Now, I'm not saying Oregon would beat Michigan. I'm not saying Washington would either. I'm not saying Texas would or Bama would or Florida State would. But my point is, I just look at it right now. I've been more impressed, and there have been – maybe I've been more impressed with Oregon than I have Washington. But I give Washington the benefit of the doubt because you beat Oregon head-to-head. I can't really, put you below Oregon because you have the head-to-head argument there, right there. The only reason I did it for Texas is the injury to Quinn Ewers. But so that's why they're 3 over Oregon, or else I'd probably have them 4 and Oregon 3. But my point is, I think they'll probably wind up getting in. I've said that already. I think they'll be 4 when they get in. But right now, I still got questions. So the teams that had questions coming in.
But you don't have any questions about Michigan, even though their quarterback just threw for 16 yards.
I like McCarthy better right now. Now.
But because he hands the ball off better.
McCarthy's been there though. McCarthy's been there. He's done it. We know what he can do.
He hasn't done anything outside of that one game throwing to tight end.
Yeah, I would say
3 drives in a row because they were stealing signs and knew what defense we were running. He literally hasn't done anything.
Mo is actually right about that. If you go back and watch the game,
go back and watch the game. And when I watch the game, I'm not gonna beat up Michigan about the sign stealing. I just want to say when it came out, if you go back now that you know what you know, go back and watch the Ohio State Michigan game. Look how it was at the first half, and then look how the second half opened. You were literally watching plays where you're like, how in the hell did the tight end, how is he just, getting open. How do you just float yourself 20 yards down the field if you don't know what's coming your way? And you started to see it. I promise you would watch that Ohio State Michigan game last year a little bit different, knowing what you know now if you see some of the plays that were made. JJ McCarthy did not. Statistically, he had an amazing game. Look at the throws he made. It wasn't amazing. And it was because they knew what defense was coming, so they knew where to slide. So I'm just saying, J.J. McCarthy really has not done anything impressive except for the fact that the quarterback whisperer, Jim Harbaugh, who's never had a good quarterback, is his most talented quarterback he's had. Whoa. A good quarterback at Michigan.
Okay, I was going to say, let's change that.
He's the quarterback. It's not changing. I was just trying to finish. He's never had a good quarterback. He's this quarterback whisperer. The only thing,
Michigan. Make sure you end it with Michigan every time.
Yes, but he's been there for the past 8 years. I don't care what he did in the NFL with Colin Kaepernick.
I'm talking about Stanford. Stanford, he only produced maybe single-handedly the most.
That was 15 years ago.
Okay, I'm still talking, but you said ever.
No, I did not say ever. I said the quarterback whisperer
has never had a good quarterback. Is what
at Michigan, you tried to cut me off because you wanted to jump on your Andrew Luck train.
Dude, any chance I get.
Andrew Luck was a 5-star, and he was literally, there was no whispering quarterback. He was the highest rated recruit since Peyton Manning. He committed to you. That's it. Jim Harbaugh's never had a good quarterback. So now everybody's buying into JJ McCarthy. Why? Because Jim Harbaugh's telling us that he reminds me of Andrew Luck. Go watch the film. He don't look nothing like Andrew Luck. He's done nothing significant outside of one game. And guess what? You know what JJ McCarthy is? He's one game. He'll go in the first round. The only difference between him and Aiden Hutchinson went in the first round.
Wait a minute. JJ McCarthy going in the first round.
He's projected in a lot of mock drafts to go first round. That's
a
not
a lot of draft guys have him as the third.
I don't think he should.
He's not the third best quarterback. Based
on mock drafts and Mel Kiper, I'm just going by them. They got him projected first.
We can talk about Mel Kiper. Different.
You know what the difference is on JJ McCarthy going in the first round and Aiden Hutchinson going off first round? Both of them raised their stock by playing against Ohio State, right? But Aiden Hutchinson was an NFL type player. JJ McCarthy would go in the first round and be an absolute bust because he's not really that good.
I agree. I don't think he's the third best quarterback in.
He's really no better than Kyle McCord. He just can run a little bit. I'll give it that. He's got legs. He's not better than Kyle McCord.
You know what's crazy?
I just think we disagree in the Blake Corum.
Spider-Man.
We disagree in the Blake Corum thing. I'm not gonna argue it. We just disagree. It's fine. Because I think last year, and you were beating the Blake Corum train last year too.
I was. Travion Henderson hurt that whole
Hang on. And let me say this.
Man, who cares
so much you had me convinced that had he came out, I may have had him above Bijan, and you know how much I love Bijan last year. So let's pump the brakes on Travion's better than Blake Corum. So I disagree with that statement. But you listen, maybe Mo, maybe you've convinced me. Maybe next week we'll see Ohio State
All
in
I'm
the
saying,
top 3.
my only thing is because everything that you would pitch for Michigan and everything that you for the Washington and Oregon argument, what bothers me is Oregon lost one, so they shouldn't be ahead of Ohio State because they're not better. The one time they've played a team to prove that they're better, they're not better. They lost that game, barely lost. And if you wanted to pitch me that you trust Dan Lanning over Ryan Day, I would tell you, guess what? Oregon has a loss because of the incompetence of Dan Lanning in that Washington game. In that Washington game, the couple decisions he made is why Washington had an opportunity to win that game.
Here's what I would say on the Oregon Ohio State thing. If Ohio State had Bo Nix, they would be blasting everyone.
That's my point.
But it would be
if this was CJ Stroud, if this was Justin Fields, if this was Dwayne Haskins, RIP, if this was Joe Burrow. My point is, like, this isn't the Urban Meyer led Ohio State. This isn't the Ryan Day with Justin Fields led Ohio State that can take Clemson to the max and Justin Fields show you that he's right up there in that conversation as maybe the best quarterback in the country with Trevor Lawrence. Like, you don't have that guy on your roster that can go toe to toe with the big boys at the quarterback position right now. And that's fine.
He beat your guy.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem me and Mo have. You're considering J.J. McCarthy one of them, and we don't think he is.
And we'll see. We'll see next week.
No, we already saw. You know when we saw TCU.
Let me ask you this, Mo.
They literally took the ball. How come? Here's what's funny. How come we don't say they took the ball out of his hands last week?
Jim Harbaugh was a suspended Jim Harbaugh. Okay. Hang on. If they come in next week with a suspended Jim Harbaugh, no, obviously the sign stealing thing has happened. So that's already like we know that has already happened, and they fired that person. If he comes in and lights the world on fire versus Oregon or versus Ohio State, and what's your excuse in it? Can't be that sign stealing. It can't be because of Jim Harbaugh.
There will be no excuse.
Both of those guys are gone.
I want people to understand that Jim Harbaugh is not the sideline presence that everybody thinks he is. He does his work Monday through Friday. So 100%. By Saturday, they walk in prepared. He could not show up. He could oversleep. They're already
Michigan will be ready.
He does his work Monday through Friday. Michigan does not wake up.
There are adjustments. Like what? No, his assistants don't know anything about adjustments.
Yes, they do. He didn't coach the first 3 games. First off, we act like this was Sharon Moore's first win as a head coach. He coached the first 3 games of the season.
And who they play?
I get that, but he already had some experience as a head coach, and literally he didn't do all he did was say, we're tougher than you. You know what he's not going to be able to do against Ohio State this year is look, you're not running the ball 30-something times straight against Ohio State. It's not happening. So therefore, if that's going to be the Harbaugh adjustment, they're not beating Ohio State, and we got to stop writing that game off.
I agree, but I do think right now, walking into that, I'm taking Michigan because I do think right now JJ's better than Kyle McCord.
JJ look silly against the best defense in the country.
We'll see next Saturday.
You better hope Blake Corum can run for 200 yards.
And you better hope I better hope that, and then you better hope that JJ McCarthy doesn't go off, because if he does, you're coming on the Morning Brew and tell me I was right. I'll make you a deal.
I'll be there. If I was wrong, I was wrong. But I'm sorry, this ain't even the Ohio State defense of last year that he looked good against. This is a top 5 defense. This is a defense.
I agree.
And they proved
I just told you it's the second best defense in the country outside of
good last year. They weren't this good last year. JJ McCarthy not doing that, and y'all don't know. They don't know the signs. We switched them up.
So I'll make you a bet. If he performs, let's see, what do you call performing? Over 250?
Sure, 250, 3 touchdowns a win, 2 to 3 touchdowns in the win, and he looks
over 250, over 250 and 2+ touchdowns. You have to come onto my podcast and say go Michigan.
Oh, there's no way.
Deal.
I will quit the network.
I'll take
the network.
All right, deal.
I will take that deal. I'll take it.
All right, everybody. Now that I'm sick to my stomach, I want to thank you guys for coming on. Mo from Up in Flames. Everybody go check out the Up in Flames podcast. Check out the Off the Ball Network for everything we're doing. Stu, Morning Brew with Stu. Everybody go check that out.
Where Mo will have to say go Michigan.
I hope not. I appreciate everybody. But Jeff Needs Sports. I'm back. I'm getting back into it. Powered by the Off the Ball Network. So like, share, review. comment, interact. We might not come back next week. There's not a lot going on this weekend, but in 2 weeks, we'll definitely be back with a, championship preview show. So I want to thank everybody for being on here. Thank Mo for being on here. Stu for being on here. You guys are the best. And this is Jeffrey Off Ball Network, and we're out.